All right, welcome to the program. Charles Moscowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. Mike,
Hello.
how are you?
Just great. Just another day in paradise.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to mention as a preface here that one of my assignments in the public affairs course I'm taking at Arizona State University was each week there's a different what they call module, which we study a public issue. And this week was the module of healthcare.
Hmm.
And I delved in pretty deeply into an essay that I submitted as part of my as my final paper for the whole course, which was can the United States, as a free market capitalist system, offer universal health care? And my conclusion is that we can, based on what I studied, which is the Swiss system and the Dutch system, where they offer universal health care, and yet all health endeavors, doctors, hospitals, healthcare providers, it's all private. There's no government involvement at all. The government simply mandates that every citizen have a basic healthcare insurance policy by law. And if you don't have it and you don't get it, they'll take it out of your paycheck and pick one for you. Or if you can't afford it, you can apply for a subsidy. But at the end of the day, every citizen has a very basic plan, and the health insurance and the hospitals, they all have to compete on the open market for which ones the citizen chooses, which means that generally the price is a little lower. There's more competition, which means more creativity. There's areas for alternative health as well, and that it looks to me like a pretty successful system. They have some regulations, but it's really run by the local cantons in Switzerland in particular. And I see no reason why this country can't do something like that, maybe with some variation. Let it be run by the states. Um, Even here in Massachusetts, for example, and I think this is true in all states, it's mandatory to have automobile insurance if you put a car on the road, but you have basic coverage. You don't have to have expensive coverage. And if you can't afford it, I think the state will offer to subsidize it. But if you want to get anything beyond the basic, like you want to buy a new car or you want to take a loan for a car, then it's up to you. I mean, and the seller, whether you should have extra collision coverage or additional other forms of coverage. But that it's really the actual auto insurance companies are not controlled by the state. They're private companies that compete on the open market. Obviously, with insurance, there has to be, there's regulation that ensures that they've got enough assets to cover, uh, you know, cases against them, and you have a secondary insurance system. But the point is that it's all free market. It's all voluntary. There's none of this Obamacare stuff where they have these state and federal run marketplaces, and they decide how it's run, and you know and also I realized that Republicans generally, rather than give these subsidies directly to the insurance companies, which the Obama administration has done, and the result is that the insurance companies have become extremely rich and they've cut back on actual coverage, that the same subsidy, if there needs to be a subsidy, could be deposited into a health savings account, in which case the holder of that account, besides having the money invested in index funds where it could grow and you could develop actual wealth, you then see how much money you have and you choose which health modality you want to buy. So there has to be accountability. They have to compete to get your dollar. That's not just automatic. And so anyway, I'm working on this. I'm turning my essay into a short book, of course,
Hmm.
which I'll publish. And I was thinking of calling it Universal Health Plan for America, because if I do and nobody knows what's in it, liberals and the left are going to think I must be a left winger. So they'll buy it and they'll be shocked to find out that I've developed a theory that's anything but what they had in mind.
Well, I mean, what you described, it's interesting because the original way Obamacare was sold was pretty much what you described, but where it got screwed up, of course, was where uh, the government started controlling what these plans were, and um, that, and the fact that the countries that you're describing that have this, Switzerland and Netherlands, are small countries.
Well, yeah, but the states are not big either. I mean, I'm suggesting it be the federal government pretty much stay out of it, with one exception, which I could mention. But let the states run it, and the states elect representatives to their state houses who will decide the degree. I mean, there can only be a national law that simply says that you're required to have it, just like you're required to have a real ID, or you're required to, hopefully identify yourself as a voter. That there's no reason why that can't be done. I think that's something that most Americans would support, because there, but for the grace of God, go I. We don't want to see our parents and our children and,
Oh, no.
people dying or suffering needlessly. Everybody, this country could do this.
I think what you get into with the states, and let's talk about the biggest one, California, where I happen to be. Um, extremely corrupt. The way that they run healthcare is abysmal. So, and I'm not saying it can't be reformed, but you have to clean out the Augean stables here before you can implement this. Ultimately, yeah, it's going to have to be that way. The problem now is, and I'm old enough to experience it through Medicare and supplemental plans, is that for what it comes down to now on Medicare side, which really controls how all healthcare is done, even for people much younger, the stuff they like paying for is not a problem. And the stuff that they don't like paying for is a huge problem, which becomes disproportionately ridiculous. When I had my bypass, the quote unquote bill was $300-something thousand. Believe it or not, my out of pocket was, I think, $350.
Mm-hmm.
Because Medicare, whatever their arrangement was with the hospital, and they obviously didn't pay him $350,000. They love doing that. That's a procedure they like, and so on. Where you get into a problem is when they start dictating the type of healthcare that can be done, and all the other stuff that occurs with these government-regulated plans, including, and this is why it comes down to even the youngest kid, the bounties that are paid to the pediatricians for giving vaccines. So if you could somehow clean up the mess, and I think it's going to have to be done because it's untenable the way it is now. No question about that.
And also, I mean, the other thing I uncovered in my research, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, which is a nonpartisan group. I think they've been around forever. I don't know how far back they go. They've discovered and we've talked about this, they've discovered just in 2 years of the Biden years, there was, I think it was $4 billion in fraud, that being Medicare fraud. I'm sure that since the program was set up in 1965, there's probably about $65 trillion. I think I read the figure. I mean, do we really even need that program? Why can't people, if you have a basic policy that covers catastrophic problems, which can be mandated, and which the insurance companies would still make money, because if everyone is paying in, then you've spread the risk sufficiently that it's they can afford to do expensive cases. But why have the government be involved at all beyond that? Just a basic coverage, and then if you want to get extra coverage to cover other conditions, you can buy it. or
Well, no, you're absolutely right. But when Medicare was set up in '65, it was sold as a program for old people.
right.
Okay. The naysayers at the time warned that there was going to be an expansion of this almost immediately and would start controlling how all healthcare is done. And they were right. They were right. So you can come up with the greatest plan that you want, but you're going to have to come in and mercilessly dismantle what exists now. And that is the challenge, because compared to the Netherlands and Switzerland, you're talking a much larger scale. And again, I'm not saying it can't be done, but you had a program that's been in place since '65.
Oh, I know. It's like getting rid of the IRS. Yeah.
That 60% of Medicare is fraud.
Well, I mean, look, you pay into, every working person pays into that rotten system in the form of FICA, right?
Yeah.
That's money comes right out of your paycheck. Why would it not be unreasonable to have that same contribution made directly to your health savings account instead of going to this colossal federal agency that is so prone to fraud and that's so prone to expansion and social engineering? If that same amount of money went into your health savings account every week or every time you get paid, then you'd have a considerable amount of money, and as part of your your HSA, you could pay for your insurance policy through that. And so you're
absolutely right. But I'm just talking about the practical things you have to overcome. Okay. This program has been in place for 60 years.
Right.
And you're going to have to convince people that we can do it better. And unfortunately, with the divided country that we have, let me go give you an example of the type of prejudice you're going to have to overcome. The WNBA, my favorite sports league, decided against putting America 250 patches on their jerseys. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it's a largely black league, and you know why? Because, well, we had slavery.
So they kind of want America?
Apparently, yeah. So this is just an example of ignorance, nonsense, and the political climate that you're dealing with. All right. So if I told you we're going to take all your FICA and now that's your health savings account, there's going to be all these liberal professors coming out essentially saying, but the public is too stupid and they're going to piss away that money. And well, that was the reason for Social Security in the first place, right?
Well, first of all, you can't just spend the money in an HSA.
Yeah.
You have to get, there are certain hoops you have to jump through. I mean, there are categories, like for example, with President Trump's program, the pension program for children, they're putting $1,000 into every account of every child born or naturalized, I assume, in America. That, you can contribute up to $5,000 a year if you're a family member or friend. The child reaches 18, the money is invested in index funds. It builds interest, it builds equity. At that time, you can then start to use the funds only under certain circumstances. You can't just take it out. I think that there were three categories. First, an accredited college. Second, a business plan that is approved by a bank. And third, first-time mortgage. So, you can't just, same thing would be true with an HSA. You can use it. In fact, I have an HSA now, and I've only was able to use it for certain things that had to be approved by Blue Cross. So, I don't think that would be anything that they could argue with any actual substance. But in the meantime, the HSA is building equity. I mean, it could be invested in not in speculative stock, but in like a mutual fund. There should be restrictions on that, but where the money is invested, and it could build during that time, creating genuine wealth in this country. I may add.
No, there's no question about it. But understand that when you talk to me or people like me, you're preaching to the choir, and you're going to have
Right.
to realize that a certain percentage of the country would consider that you're giving this money to the robber barons and the capitalist warmongers, and you're going to have to get over this class envy stuff that's been brewing since the days of dear FDR.
No, well, what you're doing is you're taking the money away from them, the great administrators who are mostly left wingers who form what we call in this country the deep state. But by the way, in Great Britain they call it the blob, but it's the same thing.
I mean,
the deep state.
Consider also the cultural issue involved with talking about the whole notion of student loans. It's the same idea. Now, every schmuck is going to be able to go to college, even if you can't afford it, because we'll have government-sponsored loans and so on and so forth. What was the net result? The net result was that tuitions inflated to an absurd extent against a backdrop of unemployed college graduates. So the cultural issue then becomes, I don't care what you've been told since 1946. There's really not much point in getting a college degree if you think it's going to help you find a job outside of specific areas, medicine, law, accounting, engineering, and so on. This ends up being a cultural issue.
It's a transfer of wealth is what it is, and that's what the left is into. And the same things happened with Obamacare. Since it was put into law in 2010, insurance has gone way up. It was supposed to be the opposite, but it has gone way up. The actual coverage has dropped. The deductions have gone up. It costs $10,000 before you even can get a vaccine. Not that I'm recommending anybody get one, but you know what I mean. I mean, it's and so you've got coverage. It's like with all these strings attached, it'd be much better for the regular consumer shopping on, all by yourself using your own account. Americans are not stupid like the left likes to think we are or claim that we are. They say that black people are too stupid to get an ID. Talk about racism. I mean, that's sheer old-fashioned rank racism to suggest that I've never met a black person that doesn't have an ID. It's ridiculous. It's a lie. And it's just one of these racist canards that was put together by the Center for Constitutional Rights, the Bremer Center, which is a turf group founded by George Soros. Anyway, on the issue of the war in Iran, I think that it seems pretty obvious at this point that mistakes were made, that Trump underestimated and was mistaken to believe the war hawks, that the war would only last for maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and that the mullahs would crumble and that the Iranian people would rise up. It could have been the case maybe a year ago when they did rise up and it was ignored and a lot of the dissidents were killed. This is an extremely authoritarian regime. But the fact is that at this point, they were planning on this attack and they developed this sort of subsidiarity system, classic to like actually a communist plan, where you have like headless groups that function and continue to move the goalposts around and continue to shuffle until the enemy gets tired or becomes worn out and quits. So they don't need to have like a head. They're basically autonomous, maybe about 20 odd subgroups that are functioning there at this point. And that they're not giving up. They have deep control. They have enough people that they do control that they are going to stay in power. It just seems, unless there's several big things happened, which I don't think anyone wants. That President Trump did not do a good job of preparing the American people for this war or explaining it. Maybe I think that his rationale for that was that he wanted the element of surprise. But the fact is that he just did it without congressional approval, without national discussion. And now it does look like it might be becoming a quagmire. And that's going to hurt everybody. It's going to hurt the
Well,
administration.
isn't it interesting that some lessons are never learned? You may remember a place called Vietnam.
Yes.
Okay. And you have a similar situation, right? You have these Colonel Blimp type military folks. And I'm thinking of your friend, Robert McNamara.
Yes.
On paper, we should be able to win this thing and blah, 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 blah. But yet, it became a true quagmire. There were horrible casualties involved on our side, which fortunately has not been the case here. But you have a situation where you have an authoritarian regime that's been estimated to kill more than 30,000 of its own people just in the recent uprisings. You also have a situation where you have some sort of restraint put on there by this absurd diplomacy, where you could tell that the other side is lying through its teeth. Well, we'll give us a ceasefire so we'll be able to regroup, and then we'll talk then. So really, the only way out is to just blast the crap out of them, take out the power, do all the horrible things that you don't want to do, and then it'll be over. And maybe learn after all this time that you don't listen to these morons that are running the military. It's like there's no lesson. They never learn. It's unbelievable.
Right. No, it's a war, and a war is a war. I mean, I think that Iran reminds me a lot of Japan in World War II. Not so much Germany. I think the German people really were not on board by the time. And they say that when Hitler went ahead, even before the war, and he occupied Prague after the Sudetenland had been annexed, he was expecting a big rally and going back to Berlin with cheers, and none of that happened. Everybody stayed home. The German people were not happy, and he was grumbling about it. He goes, "What the hell's wrong with everybody?" I mean, and so they weren't. Of course, the Nazi inner circle itself was extremely radical, but it wasn't pervasive enough that Germans got on board with it. And I think that Germans were happy to see that country finally rid of the Nazis, even though it was a difficult time, especially in the immediate years after the war when there was starvation. But they were in it too deep. The Nazis had already achieved such incredibly authoritarian power after the Constitution was suspended and the night of the long knives and all of that, that there was, they had reached a point of no return. But I think in the case of Japan was a little bit more like what Iran is. You did have a very radicalized population that was willing to die and go down with the ship. They believed their emperor was God on earth. They, they were willing to commit suicide rather than surrender. And the United States would have already had terrible casualties doing the island hopping strategy, which was a good strategy, but it was a very costly one. They had already, right? They turned the tide.
Why don't we say the quiet part out loud here? All right. What is the similarity between the Germans? Or no, what's the similarity between the Japanese and the Iranians?
They're not a Christian country. No, it's not Christian, and it's a radicalized religion that worships kind of almost earthly powers, I guess you might say, as opposed to Christianity, which is the individual has a relationship with God and Jesus is the intercessor. It's not, there's no ruler, there's no Führer princeps, although they had that, but they didn't go on board with it. Whereas in Japan, they did have that, and the mullahs have that. They've made that claim that they speak for Islam, and they can do that within an Islamic context. And enough people have bought it. And in the case of Japan, I mean, it was obvious they were going to lose. They knew they were going to lose after Guadalcanal, but yet they were willing to fight right down to their last citizen, their last woman, and their last child, putting them out in the battlefield. And the United States would have had to have landed on the island, which would have been very costly. It would have cost who knows how many American lives, and it was very questionable. So ultimately, and I'm not saying we should do this, but they did make the choice of the bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And even then, you still had a battle in Tokyo. They still weren't going to surrender. Finally, the emperor was asked at last what was his opinion, and he said, we have to surrender. And even after that, you still had, there was still like a battle, and people were shot. There was almost a coup d'etat. You had people committing suicide in the courtyard, yet, like it wasn't going down easy. Yeah. So that to me is analogous. Now, I'm not saying that the United States has to drop a nuclear bomb like in Nagasaki, but I think that, we are in a war, whether we should be or not just with the radicals, mullahs, but with this international Islamic terror network and their leftist allies. And they are all over the place. They've infiltrated
for sure.
the American
to comment on the Japan thing, you're absolutely right. And I've always wondered why the two cities they chose to drop the bombs on were the most Christian cities.
Yes, especially Nagasaki. It was a very Christian city. That's right. It's a very important question. I wonder. And I'm not necessarily on board with that policy either. I mean, it's in fact one of the men who actually flew the Enola Gay over Hiroshima and was a bombardier at Nagasaki. He happened to be living in the community I grew up in here in Massachusetts, and I knew his nephew, and he was a known figure in our community. Interesting man. Totally on board with it. Said we had to do this, otherwise Stalin would have come in. Fine, but yeah, it's bothered. I think he had some. I don't want to get into it, but I think he had some mental problems.
Well, there were some serious weird politics that went on with that, because you had people claiming, well, first of all, they came up with this number. There would have been 1 million deaths if we had to land on Honshu, but and then you find out, well, maybe that number was made up, but it was also, you have to put in the factor, which maybe you're alluding to sort of, that the American public was just damn sick of it.
Okay. Oh yeah, and also, my good friend, the late Dr. Samuel Blumenfeld, you remember him?
Yeah.
He was in the Italian theater during the war, and he told me that Germany had already been defeated, but that they were getting ready to ship out and go to Japan at the time that bomb was dropped, and they were elated. They were like, "Oh, thank God, we don't have."
Well, yeah, that was it. If you looked at the narrow issue of was it justified, you have to, the people that try to make that argument forget about the fact that the American public, let alone the soldiers that would have been redeployed, were just damn sick of it. And let's end it. And that's what it's going to be. Okay. So it's a nasty business. And when you decide to try to calibrate somehow, well, maybe it would have been better if we only killed 10,000 people instead of 75,000 people. So you got to know what you're getting into, but then you decide, okay, is it worth it? And if it's worth it, you got to go whole hog. But
I agree with you, but I think that we are, whether we should be in it or not, we are in it, and the only way out is to an utter It's like what Ulysses Grant said during the Civil War: complete unconditional surrender. It was the only way. I mean, there was a lot of talk at that time of like stopping the war. And then Roosevelt repeated that at Casablanca: unconditional surrender. I think that's what we have to say now with Iran: unconditional surrender, no conditions. Otherwise, if they're allowed to stay there, they're only going to rebuild their bomb. In fact,
Oh,
the
absolutely. But you
Khamenei's
have to ask
son has
yourself,
said so. I mean, he wants revenge for
yeah.
for the death of his father. He's and the death of his spouse and his children. He's there, and he's ordered the IRCC to launch up and ratchet up the bomb project. They're not going to stop that. They're not going to stop it until they have it and they drop it. And so, we're in this thing now. It's just real, and they have to take that out. It's just that simple. I think it could be done, hopefully, God willing, with a minimal loss of innocent life. But my understanding, I'm listening to some military people. I don't know whether to make of it, but they say that the United States does have this technology that they haven't used yet that could do some very deep piercing of Earth, like in the case of this Pickaxe Mountain, which the Iranians are trying to use now to rebuild their bomb project. Apparently there's some nuclear involved with it. It goes very deep. And I think that if they use that, then they could destroy Pickaxe Mountain, hopefully, God willing. And there won't be much loss of innocent life, if any. I mean, there might be military people in there, but that's a military target. And they could end the Iranian nuclear program. And maybe they don't take down the regime. Fine. Look, ultimately, the United States left Hirohito in place in Japan and brought back some of the Japanese after they were defeated. Germany, a lot of former Nazi officials stayed in place. They weren't necessarily involved in the atrocities. They were just Nazis, but they needed them to run the country, and they stayed there. So it's not necessary that they have to completely end their entire infrastructure, but they have to take out the nuclear part of it and completely make sure that they never get that again. And if they try to rebuild it, bomb it again. I see that as the objective. And I think it can be done.
I think you're right. And maybe Trump was sold a bill of goods as to how easy it's going to be to do this. And you have really the American people that don't have the stomach, frankly, for anything these days, given the divided state of the country, the liberal media looking for any misstep on the part of Trump. It's
exactly. It's awful. I mean, the way they cover this, they might as well be throwing it in with the mullahs. I mean, they're reporting on propaganda that comes right out of Tehran as if that's fact. I mean, look, the Israelis understood how to do this. They understand that Hamas is not going to leave Gaza. Hezbollah is not going to leave Lebanon. They have radical followers. They've got power. So they've made them they've debilitated them to the point where they are no longer a threat to
That's right.
to this state. And every time, if you look at, for example, the Israeli the not the Mossad, but the military site. I follow that on Twitter. There's a couple of other places. They've gone back to their original policy before the war. And that is that they very strategically and very carefully go in and take out individuals who are threatening them, who are planning to engage in a terrorist act. They go in and they find the munition factories and they blow them up. And they're doing that now in Lebanon and in Gaza. And so, yeah, Hezbollah will be there, fine. Hamas will be there, okay, but they're not going to have the ability to any longer threaten Israel or threaten Israeli citizens or Israeli property, because every time they raise their head to do it, Israel takes out the very specific individuals who are posing as that threat. And that's maybe the approach with Iran. They're not going to give up their radical beliefs. It's not going to happen. So you have to just go in there strategically and surgically take out what is threatening. Anything involved with nuclear, uranium enrichment, nuclear development, anything that's involved with threatening the Strait of Hormuz, with even if it's little ships. In a way, Trump is doing this with the drug cartels who are trying to ship drugs into the United States. You find the boat that is doing this and you blow it up. You don't have to go to war. You do it, with the use of intelligence, the use of surveillance, the use of satellite imagery that sees these things. And you just do it carefully and over time. Maybe they'll eventually fall. It might take years. It might take centuries before they fall. But if they want to continue with their radicalism, they will. I mean, there's nothing you could do. I wish they wouldn't, but they will. You have to debilitate them so they are no longer a threat to their neighbors. It's just that simple.
Well, it's interesting that the Israelis realize this because they've been fighting against this sort of thing for centuries, although there may have not formally been the state of Israel there.
Right. Oh, no, it goes way back.
They understand it, but the U.S., sad to say, has this inflated opinion of their military history. Let's be honest. Yeah, we lost a lot of people in the Japanese theater. In the European theater, we fought to the last Russian. All right.
Maybe
World War I,
he might have become overconfident because of the very successful operation of Venezuela. They were able to take out that government without any death at all. It was well planned.
Okay, and look why? Because everybody hated that government. The Venezuelan people were extremely happy.
They were. And I think that Netanyahu now is going to be in Washington, I think tomorrow. And I don't know what he's going to suggest to Trump, but if he's going to suggest that the United States expand the war effort, he's dead wrong. We should not get involved in a ground war. We should not commit American soldiers to fight and invade Iran. Probably Israel wants that. They want it for their own reasons. They don't care. I mean, and I think that's wrong. We don't have to do that. This isn't like landing on the beaches of Normandy. It's just not going to happen that way. And in the case of Normandy, they were landing on occupied territory anyway, France. So there wasn't like the Nazis were that popular. But in the case of Iran, no, it's not going to, they can't and they shouldn't. And I hope that he doesn't listen to that.
Don't forget that the mayor of New York was calling for the arrest of Netanyahu. So what I'm saying is we can't forget that we have an extremely divided country.
Well, that's a reason for really utterly defeating Iran because, you have the infiltration by that. I don't know if it's literal infiltration. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know if it's financial infiltration, although I wouldn't be surprised there either. Qatar gives more, I think 3 times as much money as AIPAC to politicians. But putting that aside, you have the psychological and ideological infiltration as proven by someone like Mamdani, who on one hand wants to arrest Netanyahu based on the International Criminal Court, which is not, thank God, recognized by the United States, while at the same time he has one of his staff aides appointed as foreign policy expert for New York, who tried to set up a meeting with the Iranian mullahs at the UN, their representative. And of course, the State Department pulled the plug on that. But, really? I mean, so he wants to talk about war crimes, and then he gives a speech, I think, from Washington's desk, where he doesn't talk about what a mayor of New York should talk about, which is how to fix the subway system, how to fill in the potholes, how to clean the garbage off the street, how to take care of the rats. No, he gives a speech accusing Israelis of targeting and murdering children. Right? I mean, so
that's the conservative punditry hasn't made more of a big deal about the fact that in the biggest city in the U.S. is run by a communist mayor.
I think there is a lot of pushback. I think that, the Democrats, not because they disagree with them, which they don't, but because they're worried that his and his ilk taking over the Democratic Party is going to relegate them to the way of the dodo bird.
They're going the way of the dodo bird. There was a story on Citizen Free Press about how the demographics of the Democrats are going to hell. They don't reproduce. Okay, so
that's why they want to open the border. I know they all have abortions, or they get married late. That's why they want to swing open the border. I don't think there's any question about that. That's why we now know that they have people registered, illegal aliens registered to vote in all 50 states, not just New Jersey where they've been caught. But, I mean, I could here in Massachusetts, one of the things that I do besides this show and besides my books and my businesses is I occasionally drive Uber as an Uber driver. And I can kind of tell you how many times I've taken people to this office in Revere. I probably shouldn't mention where exactly, but it's a registry of motor vehicles office, and that they don't speak English. I think that they're registering to drive, and that is part. If you look at the registration, it asks you, "Are you a citizen?" They don't have any way of confirming whether you are or not. But if you check off that you are, then you're automatically registered to vote.
Yeah, motor voter.
Yeah, motor voter in Massachusetts. And there has never been, it's illegal for them to say they're not an American citizen if they are, if they're not. But that has never been prosecuted in this state. They're not going to do anything about it. Everyone knows it. There's a big wink on that one. So, there's something funny going on over there at that office. Massachusetts has a ton of registered voters who are illegal aliens who don't even know in many cases.
And of course, what's happening with that, if you watch the talk shows, is for many, many years, this was 100% denied. Now we're at the point where the Abby Phillips of the world will say, yeah, well, it's not that big of a problem.
It's only a little, minimizing it. And the fact is that the people who are registered to vote and illegal aliens, they don't even know they're registered to vote. So we don't even know who's doing the voting.
Yeah.
That's like another question. I mean, how that vote's cast and who casts it. But, this is like a real corruption. And of course, they've got federal judges who are radicals who are running interference. There's been 800 lawsuits filed against the Trump administration since he took office the second time. And you've got these radical federal judges and probably state judges who are just running interference. You can't question, people's voting, looking at who they are. You can't question their residency. You can't question a state that doesn't want to purge their voter rolls of people who have either passed away or moved out of state. They somehow find in the Constitution an excuse. And I'm not going to get into details, but I have actually read some of these decisions, and they're worse than you think. I mean, they're more convoluted even than
I'm glad you say that, because let's just expand it and say that many of these decisions are worse than you think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're almost blatantly, nakedly anti-Constitution. I mean, they're telling the Department of Health and Human Services that they can't fire people? Really?
Yeah.
Where in the Constitution? Or they're going to tell the government that it has to give $2 billion, how many billions of dollars a year to Planned Parenthood? First of all, the Congress voted to cut that funding in the big, beautiful bill. The president signed that law, and the Supreme Court upheld it. And yet we have a federal judge, I'm not going to mention who marches in and simply issues a pervasive national directive saying that the government can't cut that funding. Why? Because it hurts women. Even if you want to make that argument, where does this judge get off making that decision? That's up to Congress, that's up to the president, and that's up to the Supreme Court. Not some hack sitting in an office in whatever city who decides that they don't like something, and that it's this is what they have this is what the only thing the Democrats have. These radical judges who are going to come in and put chains on the will of the American people.
Yeah, they've done a real good job of taking over institutions, even as they've lost the hearts and minds of the common man. So we have sufficient problems right here at home.
Right. And that's why, I mean, besides the fact that it would getting rid of the Mullah's nuclear facility, if not getting rid of them, which would be wonderful, but I don't know if it's possible without loss of American lives, would go a long way toward reordering this whole situation. Because as long as they are seen even remotely as winning, then the Democrats, the left that control the communist left that controls the Democratic Party will be winning. And they very well might win. And if they do, good Lord, I mean, God help this country.
Yeah, well, we've been fairly negative this particular episode, but
what do you have on a positive note?
yeah, well, that's it. I mean, I've got a couple of articles started, and they're not positive, which is not fun to write about.
Right.
But it's, I think changes are occurring. I think a big thing is to diminish the influence of the cultural left. The current thing, which they're really propping up to an absurd extent, is this movie, The Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Briefly, the opening weekend did $250 million, which they said, this is great, wonderful success. The problem is the movie's going to have to do about 800 break even.
So it isn't this huge hit that everyone's saying it is? Because, I mean, my left-wing friends are telling me, oh, you can't even get into the theater. There's a line. La, la, la.
No, this is actually not true. It may have been difficult the first week.
Right.
But the point is that this is some sort of cultural touchstone, rewriting a classic of literature, even to the point that the very woman that wrote this revisionist translation, Emily Wilson, was not happy with the movie. But it's just a last gasp effort to try to control the culture, and it's starting to fail. More and more, and looking on the idea of the academy, there are more and more kids that just are saying, the hell with it, or I'll go to junior college, I'll get a trade, I'll do something. I mean, these are very pernicious institutions that have been around for many decades.
Right.
And there's a lot of negative coming from these institutions. Hollywood, one way or another, is going to run out of money.
Well, they're already laying a lot of people off. And
well, they're laying a lot of people off. And the story going around the industry, which has to be confirmed, is the deal that Chris Nolan got on this movie is stratospheric. $20 million up front, plus, depending on who you want to believe, 5 to 10% of the gross once it gets beyond a certain point.
Well, he's made some pretty good movies. I mean, some pretty good blockbusters. I liked the Oppenheimer. I thought that was pretty good, and also Dunkirk was pretty good. So, I mean, he's got a record of making good movies. But
I don't know. I really thought that Oppenheimer was a little too sympathetic to the guy.
Maybe, yeah. That's true.
I mean, my complaint with that movie was great. You have a 3-hour biopic, and you can't really touch upon the fact that the guy very likely was a Soviet agent.
Yeah, he was surrounded by communists. And also, I mean, one of the podcasters I listen to somewhat regularly is Michael Knowles. I don't know if you ever listen to him. He's up there. He brings a certain Catholic sensibility to his culture critique, does a lot of Catholic issues. He said that he liked the movie, Odyssey, because he said that it basically took the pagan story of Odysseus and it Christianized it, it Catholicized it, and that he sees a lot of Christian values imposed in it, which is not the real story. But
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
yeah, but he thought it was fine. He thought it actually was. I mean, I didn't see it, so I can't say. And he even says that the transsexual character in that movie, the actor, plays a character that actually was portrayed as a transsexual in the Odyssey, the actual Greek book. So that was his opinion. Again, I haven't seen it.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of his, to be honest, but
Okay.
the character Sinon was not in the Odyssey.
Oh
It
no,
was in the
okay.
Aeneid.
Was in the
Okay.
Aeneid. So yeah, it was a Roman thing.
Yeah. So the problem with Knowles is that he's a little too much, as people like Pearl Davis would say, of a simp. I mean, he wants to go mainstream, and like Ben Shapiro,
Right.
loved the Odyssey, despite the fact that in his review of it, he neglected to mention all the normal things he would criticize with movies that he doesn't like. Now, when Noel says, okay, a Christian sensibility was brought to the thing in the point that Odysseus is feeling kind of regret of how he used trickery to win the Trojan War and regret over the fact that he lost men. That really isn't in the source material.
Right. Of course not. I mean, he considered it to be valorous to fight those wars.
So I'm not sure that rewriting a story to portray these so-called Christian values is valid in itself. I mean, how far do you want to go with that? Do you want to feel sympathy for all the evil characters in the Old Testament because you're going to rewrite it that, well, Cain, you see, was misunderstood? I mean, how far do you want to go?
The left has rewritten the story of Jesus, right? I mean, they've made him into, I mean, almost a feminized figure a little bit, as opposed to the, I've come with a sword. The Garden of Gethsemane was a pitched battle. I mean, right? He says, put away your swords. It's sort of like he was, throwing over the tables in the temple. I mean, he wasn't just this warm and fuzzy character that, has emerged.
This Galilean flower child that they.
Yeah, they put it like with the sandals and the nice little blonde beard. I don't think so. I don't think that's what Jesus looked like. But, I mean, he was filled with a lot of righteousness and a lot of, exposing evil in his day and doing it in no uncertain terms. I mean, you look at some of the language there, but they kind of whitewash and they make it into like some kind of a, like a hippie with a daisy or something. It's
So that is the problem with this kind of revisionist look. And the other problem I have with the movie is that Nolan uses the same techniques every damn film. Okay, the story is told out of time, making the narrative unnecessarily complicated.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, the first hour is boring as hell.
Right.
And there are people that have said this, but not enough critics. One of the first rules of making a movie is show, don't tell. But in the first hour of the Odyssey, it's basically people talking to each other.
Oh, okay.
All right. The stunt casting was kind of stupid in that those characters have a total screen time of like 12 to 15 minutes. So we threw it in there just to be PC, which comes down to this sort of funny thing that you're the number one director in Hollywood, but you still have to kiss the collective ass of the liberal establishment.
Mm-hmm.
Then what good is it to be number one, right?
I know. Well, doesn't he have enough clout to have creative, control over his own?
Well, he has 100% creative control but yet he has to bow to the convention.
Right, I get it.
And, you know, the sound is always bad, every single movie. And in this one, it's resoundingly so.
Yeah.
The over-reliance on practical effects to the point that it becomes too expensive, doesn't look as good as it could. I don't think the casting of Matt Damon was correct.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what's her name, who played Penelope Hathaway, was not very good.
Right. I've never seen her good in a movie anyway. But
yeah. So why did she get the part? She's supposed to be the strong woman, but yet every scene she's whining and crying.
Well, she got the part because she has a name. You know, they want to get a safe person who has some name recognition, and you know they'll ruin a movie over that.
So
like the movie Rock of Ages
of this film by the captive critics is really appalling, and now they're even going into messing around with ratings, claiming that the Rotten Tomatoes high rating of 97% is fake. Some mathematical geniuses have looked at this, getting into apparently somehow the source code of the website and seeing it's more like 56%. So if you have to somehow force the establishment critics, mess around with the algorithm, and start lying about the fact that the theaters are crowded, then you really kind of lose all respect for this industry.
Yeah.
I feel bad, and I'm telling you that the moguls are spinning in their graves about how this thing has gone off course.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, it's rudderless. I mean, that whole industry has lost its way because of wokeness and political correctness, which I understand that movie is drenched in, and it doesn't. People don't resonate with it. It doesn't, you know.
Well, I mean, it's one thing if you want to make a political correct movie, but if you take a story that's anything but politically correct,
right,
and try to transform it, it's so dishonest and so stupid, and it's cultural vandalism to the Greeks, right?
By the way, speaking
what about representation, right? There wasn't a single Greek in the movie.
Right, exactly. It's like who was it that said that the French soccer team didn't have a single Frenchman?
Yeah.
But speaking of things that are not politically correct, it's a fairly good documentary. Could be a lot better, could be a lot deeper, but I'm proud of the Wall Street Journal for running this documentary called Lockdown Dissidents. It's about COVID, and it talks about the doctors. You got to check it out. Yeah, and it's worth seeing. They touched on things that have been verboten. They didn't go far enough, in my opinion, but you know.
But at least they did it.
Yeah,
and they, you know, you can criticize maybe they didn't go far enough, and why did they wait this long? But I'm glad they did.
Ran the movie.
Oh, and by the way, I almost forgot.
Yeah.
Elon Musk is so ticked off about how bad the Odyssey is that he said he's going to give $100 million to Mel Gibson to make the correct movie.
I've heard that. Wonderful. That would be great. You know, I mean, he can do it. So anyways, but check out Lockdown Dissidents. It's a Wall Street Journal. It's available, I think, at, I don't know if it's Netflix or whatever. You could just get it on TV. I watched it. He does say that one of the guys interviewed said that he was attending early on in the pandemic, a meeting with Anthony Fauci, and Fauci said to him at the meeting, he goes, "People aren't scared enough. We have to scare people more." And this guy said, "Excuse me, can you repeat that, please? You know, what is this science? what are you doing here? I mean, this isn't, you're supposed to be the arbiter of science. And it also shows how Fauci was obsessed with his own fame, his own image. Anyway, check it out. It's not bad. I mean, again, it could have gotten into, could have
Well,
gone.
no one's a bigger critic of Fauci than me, but
Oh, yeah.
Fauci was allowed to exist because of Francis Collins, who, if he had any integrity, would have fired that guy decades earlier.
Well, they show the email exchange between Collins and Fauci, where they decided to demonize these doctors who were the most respected in their field, in that they would call them like fringe kooks, and
Right.
this was very calculated. I mean, that's a matter of public record. So they get into that. It's again, Lockdown Dissidents. It's Wall Street Journal.
I will check it out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Mike. As always,
So, upward, and as always,
thanks for joining me. And
we will
talk to
see you
next week. All right. Bye-bye.